Hello friends, today we are going to discuss on ecosystem services. It is the part of our course, postgraduate diploma in sustainability science and course number 2, that is MST012, ecosystem natural resources. In the last session, we have looked into the basic concept of ecology and ecosystem from different perspectives, with major focus on, towards the direction of understanding that under the principle of sustainability. So, in this, let us try to understand how this ecosystem is giving what kind of services and how it is related to our human well-being. When we look into that, the concept of ecology, ecosystem, in terms of structure and function, we know that the natural elements in the ecosystem, in structure and composition, is natural biodiversity, the lands, that is surface soil, geomorphology, minerals, and other non-living components, the water we drink, air, energy like solar energy, and other mineral resources like oil, etc. They're the foundation of natural these elements. When we talk about structure and composition of ecosystem, if you're diverted towards, diverted somewhat from the conservative ecological perspective towards a socio-cultural, socio-ecological point of view, this ecosystem and the structure and composition of ecosystem, we have to understand the socio-cultural elements that include the cultural biodiversity that we're talking about, that our animal stock, domestic stock, and with the humans. Then, since the growth of human civilization is we have constructed a number of roads and post-industrialization, modern buildings, and our amenities, other transport system, cars. These are some of the socio-cultural elements we have to tag under the structure and composition of ecosystem. How these are interacting is what we learn when we are studying that ecosystem function, which we can relook in that this ecosystem structure and composition is redistributed among themselves, means one compartment to another, in the form of nitrogen energy to evolve in new assets, like the processes like the water has their own cycle, means it passes from one compartment to another compartment. Then like that, nutrient also, carbon also, energy also, they have their own that cycle. No, in that way, the ecosystem process and function it. On the other hand, in the same time, the diseases and the pest organisms, they also regulated the production of the system. And photosynthesis is the first step to produce the energy, that solar energy into food energy. Then air regulation we're talking about, it regulate flood, and then we, in the meantime, the social processes with interaction of nature society, then we develop economic processes. So in these processes, in that different compartment, through these processes, we develop another new structure or composition of that ecosystem. If it is not disturbed by the human, then natural processes carries on. But if you look into the present modern world, then it created a new ecosystem, structure, function. So the point is that then we have to understand the relationship among ecosystem elements and the processes. All these ecosystem elements and the processes are forward for our human beings, right? Human well-being. Okay. As we know that this ecosystem is, widely recognized as the planet's life support system. When we're talking about the scale of ecosystem, we're talking about biosphere as an ecosystem. So they are life support systems. Okay. So this nature, its goods and services, they are the ultimate foundation of life for human species and all other living beings. And all these living beings, including human, has a fundamental need for that food, water, air, shelter, and different climatic conditions. That is what we are getting from the ecosystem, directly or indirectly. And there is changes in the flow of these different services, and if there is changes that affect to our health, livelihood, income, and our way of pattern of migration, even if we look into that social system and the created social system by us, like political affairs of our human societies also impact that directly in turn have direct impact on our human well-being, right? So that is what we have to, why we need to understand what is ecosystem services. So let us have a look. What are ecosystem services? How can you understand ecosystem services or define ecosystem services in a technical way? Like we can say from academic point of view, ecosystem services are the conditions and processes through which the natural ecosystem and that species that make them up sustain and fulfill human life. And it can be taken as those ecosystem goods such as food, as you know, basically we are getting food from the ecosystem, and services like waste assimilation and others, that they represent the benefit of our human population directly or indirectly, and this comes from ecosystem functions. Ecosystem services is what we are getting from the ecosystem for our well-being. It can be categorized in a different way. When we we learn about the ecosystem structure and structure concept of this ecology in ecosystem, we have seen that different structure in different form. The same way, we can categorize that or classify ecosystem services depending upon the function they are doing. Okay, so functionally, this can be looked as a regulation, career, habitat, production, and information services. If you look from organizational groupings, that like services, what we are getting are that associated with certain species, that those species that regulate some of the exogenous input or that are related to the organization of biotic entities, right? So if you look in a descriptive way, or that means descriptive groupings such as, you will see renewable resources as a goods, non-renewable resources as goods. Then what we are talking about, physical structure services, and then some biotic component services, then biochemical cycle services, then information services, and social and cultural services. So in that way, we can look at different services given by the ecosystem. So Before coming into detail about the different categories of ecosystem services, let us have a quick look into how this concept of ecosystem services are technically into to the academic framework over the time. Now, based on a review done by Chaudhary et al. In 2015, you will see here that before, pre-1997, different authors like Martin, and then Whitman, Ilrig, and other organizations like the UNEP's Global Biodiversity Assessment, when they're trying to understand, when they're discussing the basic concept of ecology or ecological context in economics or any impact assessment, they use this term ecosystem services. And then first, it was used by Ilrig in 1981. Then, in 1997, there is global recognition of payment of ecosystem service was launched, and then different nations they have interested in understanding this ecosystem services or payment of ecosystem services. And so from that onward up to 2000, you will find a number of publications by different authors here, Costanza, Daly, and many more report. They have when they are trying to discuss or study different discipline of different component, different process of agriculture, ecosystem service assessment, forestry, history, hydrology, and then marine biodiversity, sociology, sustainability. They widely accept that this term, and some of the global organizations who take key roles in this publishing those output means publication. Those concepts are International Biosphere and Geosphere and Biosphere Program that was started in 1997, and then ecosystem approach means Millennium Ecosystem Assessment means Millennium Development Goals in 2000, and these are some of the key institutions that has produced a number of publications that work on ecosystem services, means use this term and widely recognized. So with that, in 2001, Millennium Ecosystem Assessment was officially launched. Then that is one of the first steps in understanding, appreciating the value of ecosystem services at global interest, means global level. So you will find from 2001 onward till 2004, few of the publications. These are the major publications which have major focus on this particular area of ecosystem services. That was the most. That is like Tillman et al., D. Cruz. There are some of the academics who are working in this area, and key institutions like, as you know, the Rio Plus 10 means Arts. Rio Plus 10 means Arts Summit 2002, and then in 2003 we have UN that they launched Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, then recognized Millennium Development Goals in 2000, and WWF also works the ecosystem services in 2004 in different disciplines when they are trying to study different approaches of different the component of ecosystem or different ecosystem. So in 2005, as you know, the United Nations Millennium Ecosystem and Millennium Ecosystem Assessment Synthesis Report was launched. And from 2005 to 2009, and then, as you know, Costanza is one of the pioneer academic scientists who are working in this area of promoting this concept of this ecosystem services. Like we have different organization, the Diversity, ICSU, IUCN, when they work on, or different authors work on governance, human well-being, landscape management, political ecology, poverty reduction, restoration ecology, and vulnerability. They use this term, widely, and trying to understand that values of ecosystem when they study all these major areas. So in 2010, United Nations established the IPBS, means they approved the establishment of IPBS, means Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. Okay. Up to that, till now, means especially in 2010, 2013, several authors was indicated here, Degrud et al., Muradkin et al., Gonish, and few more, organizations like IPBS and CBD, Convention on Biodiversity Strategic Plan, that is International Satoyama Initiative, and when they try, they looks towards the interdisciplinary perspective of different issues like food security and multidisciplinary perspective of different environmental issues. They use this term to understand, to explain those issues for a better that understanding of the value of ecosystem. So, if we look, those ecosystem services we can categorize into four important types. One is provisioning services, second one is regulating services, third one is supporting services, fourth one is cultural services. Provisioning services are the products obtained from ecosystem that includes, that is very simple, as you know, that we are getting food and fiber from any of the ecosystem. It may be from the aquatic ecosystem, forest ecosystem, agricultural ecosystem. Then we have files. If you go to any of the rural area, even in the peri-urban area, also, we fired wood as a fuel. Then genetic resources means different varieties of plants and animals or their ecosystem. And whatever medicine and pharmaceutical, natural medicine or pharmaceutical products, they are from this ecosystem, biochemicals, etc. Number of ornamental resources are also there. We are getting fresh water. These are the provisioning services provided by the ecosystem. Then, as you know, the process of regulation is also going on when we are talking about ecosystem functioning. So, the services through this regulation, means regulating services, that those kind of benefits obtained from the regulation of those ecosystem processes. They are, it maintains air quality. That's why we're talking about making more greenery. Then climate regulation, water regulation, erosion control. If you go to the hilly area, we're talking about planting trees or vegetation in the sloughs to control the erosion. Water purification, waste treatment, it's very simple logic. Purification is water is taken place in its own natural way. Then regulation of human diseases, that's why we're talking about better air quality, better water quality, better environment. Then biological control and pollination happen, and then storm protection. These are some of the regulating services provided by the ecosystem to us. As you know, when you are passing or looking across the world in general, and if you look across India also, you will find out different environmental condition, different geographical condition. Whenever you travel into different geographical areas, you will find out different culture. So that shows that it gives us that culture, that society and environment is highly interrelated, and this is we can tag those as cultural services. So these are the non-material benefits where people obtain from ecosystem, through our spiritual enhancement, cognitive development, reflection, recreation, and aesthetic experiences. That's I told you that diversity of culture is because of the diversity in ecosystem. Then we have spiritual, religious values are depending upon the environment. Then we learn, we receive education values from ecosystem. And inspiration you will get it. Aesthetic values is there. Cultural heritage values is there. Recreation in ecotourism is there. Right. The third one is supporting services. Another one is supporting services. The supporting services are those that are necessary for the production of all other ecosystem services. That is primary production, as we talk about when we're talking about a food chain. When we're talking about food web, and the food chain, we know that primary production is there. Then soil formation, there is this ecosystem function. You will find, we know that formation of soil is taken place. Then biogeochemical cycle, as we are talking about the chemicals of metals and energy passes from one compartment to another compartment. So these are some of the supporting services. Through this only we are getting our food and energy. These are some simple example you will find out in this table, which is of different categories of ecosystem services based on Willis 2007 in provisioning services. And then what type of in the type of provisioning service we will find out these are the services we are getting. In regulating services we are getting what we have explained those here. Okay. When you look, when we study the concept of ecosystem and ecology, you learn that ecosystem basic foundation started from gene to your ecosystem. There is flow of resources, information is there, right? When in the center of the particular ecosystem services, in that ecosystem service you will find out genes. Then from genes you will find out species, and different species make an ecosystem, right? And different ecosystem makes a landscape. So from the landscape level you will be able to understand different ecosystem services, right? Here you will find out how it is related. Means, when we're talking about provisioning services given to us, it depends on your stocks of species, genetic stock, species, then level of ecosystem means quantity or whatever you say, level of ecosystem that is we're talking about. When we're talking about cultural service also, the structure of and patterns of those genes, species, and ecosystem that give us different cultural services. And that's from genes to ecosystem, the functioning is going on. The internal function of natural function is going on. That sometimes we said that is biodiversity function. This function gives us regulating services. In the same way, the composition of that ecosystem from genes to that system, from genes up to the ecosystem, that gives nature conservation value of that supporting services. Because different composition of genes, species, and ecosystem that support it, the existence of that system, right? Here you will find out how ecosystem processes and ecosystem services are related. We know soil formation, nutrient cycling, primary production, biomass, pollination, they are the ecosystem processes. And these processes, what kind of ecosystems are given by these processes? Through these processes, we'll find out that gives us clean water, provision, crops, trees, water regulation. These processes give us goods, drinking water, then different crops, variety of wild species, flood protection, etc. Right. This kind of goods, services or goods is getting to us, means to the people. This is how ecosystem, process and services is very important for our own survival. If you look into relevance of ecosystem integrity for the provision of other ecosystem services and human well-being, what we know is that the ecosystem services is important for human well-being. Right. If you look into their relevance to that of our human well-being, we'll find out these ecosystem services, they have their own integrity. You cannot look in isolation. The supplying services, that is, it is through ecosystem structure and function, and this ecosystem function and structure and supporting services that make ecosystem integrity, that gives us that provisioning services, regulating services, cultural services. All these services are interlinked to each other, and the final product, that is final benefit, is to our human well-being. Right. When we're talking about human well-being, let us have a quick look into what we have studied in the first course, that is in Sustainability Science MSD 011. We have learned about hierarchy of needs. In that, in extension to that, in 1973, one of the economists, Herman Daly, proposed, as we call as Daly's triangle, a strong sustainability framework. In that, now here in this and that Daly's triangle, you will find out the natural environment is viewed as the ultimate means natural capital. It is the foundation to achieve ultimate ends of human well-being. Right. So, whereas the relation we are talking about, the system created by us, like economy, technology, politics, ethics, are the intermediate to bridge that ultimate means natural capital to your human well-being. You will understand. When we are talking about human well-being, we will find that the major characteristic, determinant and constituent of human well-being is security, and then basic materials for a good life, our own health condition, then for a good social relations. Then at last we need to have our own freedom and choice. So how this major determinant and constituent of human well-being is how we are getting from ecosystem services. Here you will find out that the different services given by ecosystem is in one or other way gives to any of the constituent of determinant of human well-being. Here you will find out, for example, if you look into your own security, means ability to live in an environmentally clean and safe shelter. It is because of the provisioning services. It is because of regulating services that benefits obtained from regulation of ecosystem processes. It is because of your cultural services. It is because of regulating services we have the ability to reduce vulnerability to ecological shocks and stress. In the same way, when we are talking about basic material for a good life, we're getting those basic material for good life, means ability to access resources to earn income and gain a livelihood from provisioning services. And provisioning services, health of the provisioning services means that services is given by regulating services. Okay, so in the same way, we'll find out how health ability to be adequately nourished means that nutritious food from where we are getting from the provisioning services, that in the form of food, fresh water, fiber, and from genetic resources. Ability to be free from avoidable diseases, that's what we are getting from regulating services like climate regulation, disease regulation. Ability to have adequate and clean drinking water is from water regulation. Ability to have clean air from air regulation. Ability to have energy to give warm and cool. That is what we are getting from all this climate protection, climate regulation, others. In the same way, when we are talking about good social relationship, this good social relationship is entirely depend on your providing services we are getting. Because of that, we have an opportunity to express aesthetic and recreational value associated with ecosystem. We have the opportunity to express cultural and spiritual values associated with ecosystem. We have the opportunity to observe, study, and learn about ecosystem through cultural services. So the point is that whenever we're talking about determinant and constituent of human well-being, that is about freedom and choice of all these determinants, it entirely depends on the functioning, health, and functions of ecosystem services. There is always the close relationship between ecosystem services and human well-being. Sometimes we must have think that okay, we have a natural capital, and we have natural capital, then we can get human well-being easily. When we talk about natural capital, you must have think that natural capital is what we get in the environment, what we are talking about ecosystem. And exactly, if you look that in the beginning we were talking about that natural capital is not only your natural resources, it's also talk about human capital, our human banks, then our the social capital, social interaction, then build capital about infrastructure. So these ecosystem services that interact through this build capital, human capital, social capital, and that interaction, this ecosystem interact with this capital and gives up human well-being. The point is that there is an interaction between built environment, built capital, social capital, human capital, and natural capital to produce human well-being. That is built in human capital is economy or economy that very much embedded in our society, and that is entirely embedded in the rest of our nature also. So the point is that ecosystem services are the relative contribution of natural capital to human well-being. They do not flow directly. So it is therefore very essential to adopt a broad transdisciplinary perspective in order to address ecosystem services for its sustainability. Because sustainability of the production of a particular ecosystem services, it refers to whether the biological potential of the ecosystem is sustained or is able to sustain the yield of the services. Means our food production is maintained or not, whether that services is sustained, the yield management, that is Yield management, it refers to the management and yield of individual resources or ecosystem services. So, the key to sustainable development, as you know, is achieving a balance between the exploitation of natural resources for socioeconomic development and the conserving ecosystem services that are critical to everyone's well-being and livelihoods. So, in order to advance our human well-being through improved ecosystem services, a better understanding of the integrated that socio-ecological system is very much needed, so that appropriate policies and practices should be or can be formulated. So, there is always, as we know that in the discussion, a close relation between this ecosystem and socioeconomic system to bring our human well-being, to maintain the sustainability of that ecosystem. If we look into the function age, we can summarize in that the functions of the ecosystem are through ecological processes, through their patterns of threats, functional threats, that biophysical structure, their genetic diversity, their species richness, and their biotic interaction. That has given us its services, as we learn, we discuss, and we use that ecosystem services, and we manage by giving more input, capital inputs, to gather benefits and values to maintain our socioeconomic systems. So, getting benefits and values out of this ecosystem, use and management, is for our human well-being. What we define, that is human well-being, is getting nutrition, clean air, water, health, safety, security, employment, and the economic value of means all those ecosystem function, the health value or social value or different value of those ecosystem function. So it can be maintained. We have a proper response through institution, business, policies in different way, like agricultural policy, forestry policy, fisheries policy, environment policy, and stakeholders and other use. What the message which I want give in this session is that we have to understand or appreciate the ecosystem services, value of the ecosystem services. The different ecosystem services give us our well-being, means human well-being. So, if there is a change in that ecosystem services, disturbing ecosystem services that have direct relation, direct or indirect impact to our human well-being, if there is changes in our socioeconomic system that makes drivers of change to that ecosystem, present ecosystem function and value and future state. So we have to understand that. So the purpose of this session is to understand the concept of ecosystem services, how it is linked up with our human well-being. So, sustainability of ecosystem services gives you a better human well-being, and for better human well-being, we need to have a proper or sustained system of ecosystem, and that will give us a continuous and sustainable ecosystem services. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. These are some of the references which I depend for this presentation. Thank you very much. We'll meet in the next session. Thank you.